I sat in the corner office of my law firm, looking at the woman I used to call my sister. The room was dead silent, the kind of heavy silence that happens right before a bomb goes off. The city skyline stretched out behind me through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but all I could see was the rage burning in Margaret's eyes. She had been my sister for 56 years. We had shared a childhood bedroom, a family name, and the same blood running through our veins. But sitting across from me now, she looked less like family and more like a predator who had finally cornered her exhausted prey. Margaret slammed her designer handbag onto my mahogany desk, the sharp thud echoing through the office. Her face was flushed with anger, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at me like a weapon. "You cannot be serious, Thomas," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You are going to leave everything to that charity? After everything I have done for you? After everything I have sacrificed?" I leaned back in my leather chair, folding my hands together in my lap. I did not yell. I did not argue. I simply waited. I had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. 3 years since my wife Eleanor passed away. 3 years since Margaret began circling like a vulture, calculating exactly how much she could extract from my grief. And now she was finally showing her true colors, demanding I change my will to make her the sole beneficiary of my entire estate. "Margaret," I said calmly, "we have been through this before. My will is final. Everything goes to the Eleanor Caldwell Memorial Foundation. It has been that way for 2 years, and it is not going to change." She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that held no warmth. "You are making a huge mistake, Thomas. I am your only living family. I am the one who has been there for you since Eleanor died. I am the one who held your hand at the funeral, who helped you through the grief, who stood by you when everyone else abandoned you. And this is how you repay me? By giving everything away to strangers?" I stared at her, feeling the cold knot of fury tighten in my stomach. She was rewriting history, twisting the narrative to make herself the hero of a story she had tried to destroy. She had not been there for me after Eleanor died. She had been there to position herself, to worm her way into my trust, to ensure she would be the one holding the keys to my kingdom when I finally fell. She had spent 3 years pretending to care while secretly plotting to take everything I had built. Before I tell you how I exposed my greedy sister and watched her world crumble in a single moment, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe to Vindication if you have ever had to stand up to toxic family members who only showed up when they wanted something. To understand how we ended up in that tense office, with my sister demanding I rewrite my will, you have to go back 3 years. The sweet scent of funeral lilies still hung thick in the air of my home. Eleanor was gone. 42 years of beautiful marriage cut short by a sudden heart attack in the middle of the night. I woke up beside her cold body, and my entire world shattered into a million pieces. The house was painfully quiet now, empty in a way that made my chest physically ache. I stood alone in the kitchen, letting the warm water run over my hands as I washed a simple drinking glass. It was a mindless task, something to keep my hands busy so my mind would not wander back to the empty chair in our living room. Eleanor had picked out that kitchen. She loved the granite countertops, the soft cream cabinets, the way the morning light streamed through the bay window. She had designed every inch of it with love and care, and now she was gone, and the kitchen felt like a tomb. That was when I heard the sharp rap of knuckles on the front door. I dried my hands and walked slowly to the entrance, my joints aching with the weight of grief. I opened the door, and there stood Margaret, dressed in an expensive black dress that looked more suited for a business meeting than a morning visit. Her eyes were dry, her makeup perfect. There was not a single tear on her face, not a trace of sorrow in her expression. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. She walked straight past me and into the living room, settling onto the couch as if she owned the place. "Thomas!" she said, her voice smooth and practiced. "I know this is a difficult time for you, but we need to talk about your estate planning." I stared at her, stunned. My wife had been dead for less than 48 hours, and my sister was already discussing my will. I closed the front door slowly, my hand trembling slightly on the handle. "Margaret, I cannot do this right now. I just buried my wife. I am not thinking about estate planning." She waved her hand dismissively, as if my grief was an inconvenience she had no time for. I understand you are upset, Thomas, but you need to think practically. You are 70 years old. You have no children. You have no other living family except me. It only makes sense that you leave everything to me. It is what Eleanor would have wanted. I felt a cold anger rise in my chest. Eleanor would never have wanted that. Eleanor had despised Margaret. She had seen through my sister's sweet facade years ago, warning me repeatedly that Margaret was only interested in my money. And now, standing in the home Eleanor had loved, with her body barely cold in the ground, Margaret was proving Eleanor right. "I am not discussing this with you," I said, my voice firm. "Not now. Not ever. You need to leave." Margaret stood up, her face hardening. She walked toward me slowly, stopping just a few feet away. "You are making a mistake, Thomas. A huge mistake. I am the only family you have left. When you are old and alone, when you cannot take care of yourself anymore, who do you think will be there for you? Who do you think will make sure you are not shoved into some cheap nursing home?" She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Think about that before you make any rash decisions." She walked out, slamming the door behind her, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence of the house I no longer recognized. The next 3 years were a masterclass in manipulation. Margaret did not give up. She simply changed her strategy. She began calling me every day, offering small kindnesses that felt calculated and hollow. She invited me to dinner, brought me groceries, and sat through endless conversations about Eleanor's memory. On the surface, she was the devoted sister helping her grieving brother heal. But I saw through it. I saw the way her eyes lit up when she mentioned my property. I saw the way she subtly steered conversations toward my financial planning. I saw the greedy, calculating predator lurking behind the mask of sisterly devotion. And I was not the only one who noticed. My longtime attorney, Victor Lang, had been watching Margaret with growing concern. Victor was 82 years old, sharp as a tack, and entirely without sentiment. He had represented me for over 30 years, and he knew my family dynamics better than anyone. He had seen Margaret's pattern long before I had, and he had quietly been building a case against her. 6 months ago, Victor called me into his office for a private meeting. We sat in his corner office, the city sprawling out below us, and he placed a thick file on his desk. "Thomas," he said carefully, "I need to show you something, and I need you to prepare yourself. What I am about to tell you is not going to be easy to hear." I nodded, my heart pounding. Victor opened the file and slid a stack of documents across the desk. I looked down at the papers, my eyes scanning the contents. They were bank records, financial statements, and copies of forged documents, and every single one of them implicated Margaret. "Your sister has been embezzling from your trust fund for the past 5 years, Victor said, his voice grim. "She has been siphoning small amounts, nothing large enough to trigger an automatic alert, but it adds up. Over the past 5 years, she has stolen nearly $300,000. I stared at the documents, feeling the blood drain from my face. $300,000. My own sister had been stealing from me for years, all while pretending to be the devoted sibling helping me through my grief. How? I finally managed to ask. How did she access the funds? "She forged your signature," Victor replied. "She has been sending fake invoices to the trust account, claiming to be handling your financial affairs. And she has been getting away with it because no one was watching closely enough. But I was watching. Thomas. I have been watching for a long time." I looked up at Victor, my mind racing. "Why did not you tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted to build a complete case," Victor said. "I wanted to make sure that when we confronted her, there would be no escape. She is not just guilty of embezzlement, Thomas. She is also guilty of fraud and identity theft. If we take this to the authorities, she could face serious jail time." I sat back in my chair, processing the information. Part of me was devastated. This was my sister, my only living family. We had grown up together, shared the same childhood memories, the same parents, the same blood. And she had been stealing from me, manipulating me, and pretending to love me for years. But another part of me felt a cold, hard resolve. I had made a promise to Eleanor on her deathbed. I had promised her that I would not let Margaret destroy everything we had built, and I intended to keep that promise. "What do you suggest we do?" I asked Victor. Victor leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with predatory anticipation. We set a trap. We let her continue to believe she is winning. We let her demand that you change your will. Let her think she has successfully manipulated you. And then, when she is at her most confident, we spring the trap. The trap was simple but devastating. Victor and I spent the next several weeks preparing. We worked with Special Agent Catherine Wells from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, a woman who had spent her career dismantling fraudsters like Margaret. We handed over the financial records, the forged documents, and the bank statements, and Agent Wells assigned a small team to the case. Meanwhile, I played the role of the grieving, broken old man. I stopped arguing with Margaret. I let her believe she was winning me over. I accepted her dinner invitations, listened to her fake sympathy, and nodded along when she subtly suggested I update my will. And she took the bait every single time, because Margaret was not just greedy, she was arrogant. She genuinely believed she was the smartest person in the room. She genuinely believed she had successfully manipulated me. She had no idea she was walking directly into a trap. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place 2 weeks ago. Margaret called me, her voice dripping with false concern. "Thomas, I am worried about you. You have been looking so tired lately. I really think you need to finalize your estate planning. It will give you peace of mind. You do not want to leave things unsettled, do you?" I played along, my voice weary and defeated. "You are right, Margaret. I have been putting it off for too long. I will call Victor tomorrow and schedule a meeting. I want to get everything settled." Margaret's voice brightened immediately. "That is wonderful, Thomas. I am so relieved. I really think this is the right decision. You will feel so much better once everything is finalized." I hung up the phone and stared at the wall, feeling the cold fury settle in my chest. She was so eager, so hungry for my money, that she had completely abandoned any pretense of caring about my well-being. She was not relieved that I was finally taking care of my affairs. She was relieved that her payday was finally approaching. I called Victor immediately. She took the bait. "Set the meeting for next week, and make sure Agent Wells and her team are ready." The day of the meeting arrived. I dressed carefully in my finest suit, the same suit I had worn to Eleanor's funeral. It felt appropriate somehow, as if I was going to bury one more betrayal before moving forward with my life. I arrived at Victor's office 15 minutes early, sitting in the corner of the conference room and waiting. The room was perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The mahogany table gleamed under the soft lighting. It was the kind of setting that made people feel important, powerful, and invincible. Margaret arrived exactly on time, dressed in a sharp designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She swept into the room with the confidence of a woman who believed she was about to close the deal of a lifetime. She smiled at me, a warm, practiced smile that did not reach her cold eyes. "Thomas, I am so glad you finally decided to do this. You have no idea how much this means to me. It is such a relief to know that everything will be taken care of." I did not respond. I simply nodded, my face an impenetrable mask. Victor gestured for Margaret to sit at the table, and she took her seat across from me, placing her designer handbag on the polished wood. She looked around the room with barely concealed satisfaction, as if she was already mentally spending the fortune she was about to inherit. Victor opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. He placed them neatly on the table in front of me, sliding a gold pen across the polished wood. "These are the updated estate documents. Thomas," he said, his voice neutral. "The will you requested, along with the trust agreement and the power of attorney forms. Everything is exactly as we discussed." Margaret leaned forward eagerly, her eyes locked on the documents. She was practically salivating, her greedy gaze fixed on the papers that she believed would make her rich. "Well, Thomas," she said, her voice bright and encouraging, "go ahead. Sign them. It is time to move forward. Time to do the right thing." I picked up the gold pen, holding it loosely in my fingers. I let the moment stretch, watching Margaret's face. She was practically vibrating with anticipation, her composure cracking slightly as she waited for me to sign. She thought she had won. She thought the trap had finally snapped shut on me. She was about to learn a very hard lesson. But before I could respond, Victor reached back into his briefcase and pulled out a second document. It was thinner than the first, a single sheet of paper that looked completely unremarkable. Victor slid the paper across the table toward Margaret, his face entirely expressionless. "Margaret," he said, his voice dropping to a cold, measured tone, "before Thomas signs anything, there is something we need to discuss." Margaret blinked, her confident smile faltering for just a moment. "What is this?" she asked, looking down at the paper. Her eyes scanned the document, and then her face went white. The color drained from her cheeks in an instant, leaving her pale and trembling. She stared at the paper, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I watched her closely, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. The document in front of her was the FBI's formal notice of investigation, complete with copies of the financial records, the forged signatures, and the bank statements that proved her guilt. Agent Wells had prepared it personally, ensuring that every detail was airtight. Margaret looked up from the paper, her eyes wide with terror. "What is this?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Thomas, what is going on?" I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. "It is over, Margaret. I know everything. I know about the forged signatures. I know about the $300,000 you stole from the trust fund. I know you have been manipulating me for years, pretending to care about me while lining your own pockets." I paused, letting the words sink in. "You thought you were the smartest person in the room. You thought you had outmaneuvered me, but you were wrong." Margaret's face contorted with a mixture of fear and rage. She slammed her hands on the table, the sharp sound echoing through the silent office. "You cannot do this to me," she screamed. "I am your sister. I am your only family. You cannot destroy me like this. You cannot send me to prison. You owe me, Thomas. You owe me everything." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and felt nothing but cold, absolute indifference. This was not my sister. This was a stranger wearing her face, a predator who had spent years trying to devour me from the inside out. "I do not owe you anything," I said quietly. "You chose greed over family. You chose betrayal over love. And now you are going to face the consequences." Margaret turned to Victor, her voice cracking with desperation. "You cannot let him do this. You are his lawyer. You are supposed to protect him, not destroy him." Victor remained perfectly still, his face an unreadable mask. "I am protecting him, Margaret," he said calmly. "From you." The heavy doors of the conference room swung open, and 2 federal agents walked in. Special Agent Wells led the way, her expression cold and professional. "Margaret Caldwell," she announced, "you are under arrest for fraud and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Margaret screamed as the agents handcuffed her, a high-pitched, desperate sound that echoed through the office. She thrashed against their grip, her expensive suit twisting and wrinkling as she fought to escape. "This is not over, Thomas," she shrieked. "You will regret this. I swear to God, you will regret this." I watched her being dragged out of the room, her screams fading as the doors swung shut behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat in my chair, staring at the closed doors, feeling the weight of the past 3 years finally lifting from my shoulders. The trial took 4 months. Margaret fought tooth and nail, hiring the most expensive defense attorneys money could buy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The financial records, the forged signatures, the bank statements. Agent Wells had built an airtight case, and the jury saw right through Margaret's desperate lies. She was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. She tried to call me from prison, leaving desperate voicemails on my phone every single day. "Thomas, please, I am your sister. I love you. I did not mean to hurt you. Please, I am begging you, forgive me." I let every call go to voicemail. I had spent 3 years listening to her lies, and I was done. The aftermath was strange. I felt lighter than I had in years, but there was also a deep, aching sadness. I had lost my wife to a heart attack. I had lost my sister to greed and betrayal. I was truly alone now, surrounded by the empty shell of the life I had built. But I was not broken. I was free. I had kept my promise to Eleanor, protecting everything we had built from the vultures who wanted to tear it apart. I had stood up to the woman who had tried to destroy me, and I had won. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life. I visited Eleanor's grave every Sunday, placing a single white rose on her headstone and sitting with her for hours. I talked to her about everything, about the trial, about Margaret, about the life I was building without her. And every time, I felt her presence beside me, guiding me, giving me strength. I started traveling, visiting all the places Eleanor and I had talked about but never had the chance to see. I went to the mountains she loved, walked along the beaches she dreamed of, and stood at the edge of the Grand Canyon, feeling small and insignificant in the vastness of the world. And every place I visited, I carried her with me. I also started a new foundation in her name, the Eleanor Caldwell Legacy Fund. It provided grants to single mothers who were struggling to make ends meet, women who reminded me of Eleanor's fierce strength and determination. I poured my heart and soul into the foundation, determined to make sure Eleanor's memory lived on in a way that mattered. And I never spoke to Margaret again. She tried to contact me through various family members, claiming she had changed, that she was sorry, that she wanted to make amends. But I knew better. Some wounds were too deep to heal. Some betrayals could never be forgiven. I had given Margaret every chance to be a good sister, and she had chosen greed every single time. 8 years passed. I was 75 years old now, still working, still traveling, still living the life Eleanor and I had dreamed of. The house had become a museum of memories, every room holding a piece of her, a reminder of the love we had shared. And then, one afternoon, I received a letter. It was from Margaret's attorney, informing me that she had been released from prison on good behavior. The letter also included a sealed envelope from Margaret herself. I stared at the envelope for a long time, turning it over in my hands. Part of me wanted to throw it away without reading it, but another part of me, a small, stubborn part, needed to know what she had to say. I opened the envelope carefully, pulling out the letter inside. Margaret's handwriting was shaky, uncertain, nothing like the bold, confident script she had always used. "Dear Thomas," the letter began, "I know you have no reason to forgive me. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I am writing to tell you that I am sorry. I spent so many years chasing money, power, and status, and I lost sight of what truly mattered. I lost my brother. I lost my family. I lost myself. I know I cannot undo the harm I caused. I know I can never earn back your trust, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see how wrong I was. I see how much I hurt you, and I am deeply, truly sorry. I hope that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. But if you cannot, I understand. Sincerely, Margaret." I read the letter 3 times, searching for any trace of the old Margaret, the manipulative, calculating woman who had tried to steal everything from me. But all I found was regret, genuine, painful regret. I sat in my study, the letter in my hand, and felt the tears finally come. Years of anger, grief, and resentment poured out of me, leaving behind an emptiness that felt almost peaceful. I could not forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time, I understood that forgiveness was not about letting her off the hook. It was about letting myself move forward. I did not respond to the letter. I did not call her. But I stopped feeling angry every time I thought of her. I let go of the weight I had been carrying for so long, and I finally felt free. I used to ride upon your shoulders thinking you could touch the sky. Every road felt less uncertain when I saw the world through your eyes. You were stronger than the mountains, taller than the northern pines. And when the winter winds were coming, you would stand between them and I. Time kept moving like the river. You slipped slowly off the sea. But no matter where life took me, you were always part of me. I am my Father's son. Every step I take, and every time I choose to stand when it is easier to break, I carry your courage in my heart, your fire inside my soul. And though the years keep moving on, your love still leads me home. You taught me strength is not in power, but in kindness when it is hard. You taught me how to keep on going when the road grows cold and dark. Every lesson, every story, every laugh around the flame lies within me like an echo, calling softly through my name. And when I face my greatest battles, when I feel I cannot go on, I can hear your voice beside me saying, "Child, you are stronger than you know. I am my Father's son. In every step I take, And every time I choose to stand when it is easier to break, I carry your courage in my heart, your fire inside my soul. Although the years keep moving on, your love still leads me home. One day the snow will cover footprints. One day the fire will burn low. But the things a father gives his son are the things that never go. Not the gold or not the stories, not the battles that he won, but the quiet way he loved him and the man he becomes. I am my father's son, and I always will remain. Through every triumph, every loss, through every joy and every pain, the world may change around me. The stars may fade above, but I will always carry with me my father's endless love. And when they ask me who I am, I will smile and answer softly, I am my father's son. I am my father's son. Thank you for listening to this story on Vindication. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. I read every single one, and I want to know where you are watching from today. Drop your country in the comments and tell me, have you ever had to cut toxic family out of your life? I will be reading and responding. And remember, a lone wolf might lose his mate, but he never loses his teeth. See you in the next story.